Hello, I'm Thalie Martini, CEO of Breast Cancer UK, and welcome to the Be Well podcast. Today, I'm talking to a unique and intriguing guest who is quite unlike any of the guests we have welcomed on Be Well before. Now, when I first read about this guest, I was catapulted back to my 11-year-old self in a rusty old fishing boat on Sydney Harbour, taking part in the local youth club fishing competition, and remembering what an exhilarating and memorable experience that was. So what's the connection? Well, my guest is a certified fly fishing casting instructor. But that's not all. She's a passionate conservationist and she's a trustee at River Action UK. She also co-founded the Cancer and Pisces Trust charity, which aims to improve the lives of people with cancer through the therapeutic pastime of angling. And she recently published her memoir, Cast, Catch, Released, where she shares how fly fishing has shaped her life. Now, you might be thinking that I'm about to introduce a seasoned individual, but she's not. She's really young, which makes these achievements all the more inspiring. I can't wait to get chatting to her. I'm thrilled to welcome Marina Gibson to the Be Well podcast. Marina, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored. It's a real privilege to be here.
Yeah, let's start with your passion for fly fishing. You're probably not what people envisage when they think of a fishing influencer. So, can you tell us, how did you get into angling?
So I grew up around fishing because my parents were so obsessed. And it was, I do say when people ask me this, I do say that out of my brother and me, it was definitely my brother who was really, really keen on fishing. And I kind of dabbled a little bit, but my mum reminds me of the time where we were on a boat and I was sleeping at the back of the boat and my brother was sat kind of like, rod in deep into different fish. So um, I I started. My parents took me on my first fishing trip when I was 5, and then I had my first lesson for salmon fishing when I was 8. And so I did certain things, but I wasn't one of those kids that were totally addicted. Like, I was addicted to nature and wildlife. That was my thing, but I wasn't obsessed with fishing. And now it's really cool because I meet kids who are so consumed by fishing at such a young age, and it's really, really amazing to see. And actually, it's funny that you say I'm not the stereotype, because in the UK, perhaps, fishing was quite male dominated. I'm not sure about Australia, but I know in America it's very popular amongst women, and in the UK it hasn't been, but recently it's really kind of exploding in that demographic. And I would say when social media, I think Instagram popped up around 2013, and back then I had posted my first fishing picture, and back then there were hardly any women who were really into fishing, so kind of taking the casting exams and working in fly shops. But there's more and more of that. So I feel like I'm not as, I think 10 years ago, um, there were, lots of newspapers or magazines saying, we want your story, this and that. But now it's not as much, like, I'm old news, like women in fishing is growing.
Well, that's brilliant to hear. You've probably had a bit of an influence on that, I would say. And so you've seen it grow around you. And how has that impacted you and the actual fishing scene itself?
I think that the main thing really is the women's events that have happened over the last 10 years, because there's definitely been a focus on having women-only events, not because we want to exclude people, but because we want to give women a space to learn without feeling uncomfortable. And then, after, when they find their feet, then they go out and they spread their wings and they go to all sorts of different fisheries and places. But I think that, yeah, it must be these women events, and also social media has played a part in that, because it's so easy to access social media and access that information and see what other people are doing every day and every weekend. So when these women groups have popped up on, they might have popped up on Facebook, they might have popped up on Instagram or TikTok, then other women see how much fun these other women are having at a fishing event, and then they go, oh, I want to go to the next one. And it's been a knock-on effect. I do a lot of women's days. So there's two sides. I do a lot of women's days with an organisation called Country Girls UK, and they actually started off as a more kind of shooting, but they've gone into fishing and they've gone into other country pursuits and outdoor activities, and they have a huge community on there, and I feel like it's given women more confidence to fill a space, rather than, because I don't know, I would say growing up, although my mum fished and she was my role model, I do remember that she was one of the only women. She would get sniffed at when she arrived, and there were no women. Like, she would never have come across a women's fishing group, never. So it's changed definitely for the good. Yeah, and it's really exciting time.
Well, I mean, I alluded to my 11-year-old self on the fishing comp, and actually, I myself and one other girl were the only two girls in the competition at the time, and that was
Amazing.
really radical, but not particularly encouraging for us to continue to do the sport, if you know what I mean.
Was
So
that,
it's so
sorry,
lovely to hear.
was that a competition for fishing or casting?
Oh, fishing. It was fishing.
Oh,
It wasn't, we were being taught to cast as part of the competition. So
yeah.
we all grouped together on different boats. And it was a very serious competition at the end of the year. And we did very well. We actually won. The two girls won the competition. It's
I
probably because
love
we had
it.
the best people with us to show us how to do the
No,
casting.
it was because of
But
you.
but I remember at the time absolutely loving it, but thinking very much that it was a one-off, and it's so lovely to hear that now it's a totally new environment for women, and there's so much more that women can get involved with in the sport. Now, you teach fly fishing yourself, and you run your own school, but can you explain to us what it actually is? Because you asked me to make that distinction between, casting and fishing. Can you explain to us what fly fishing is?
So fly fishing is, I'll try and explain it the way that if someone saw someone fishing. So if you saw someone fishing on a canal or a river, you've got someone either fishing with a conventional rod, which is using the weight and a very heavy lure on the end, which is with a conventional rod, and you throw that weight to your target. Whereas fly fishing, you use the weight of the fly line, because you can't use the weight of the lure, which we call a fly, because it's made of very light materials like feathers, fur, and fin. Feathers, fur, and feathers, fur, and whatever else, like synthetic materials. So it's so light. So you use the fly line to cast to your target, but you have to false cast, which is when you go back, forwards, to get your line out, to get the distance to your target. So I would say that fly fishing is, I mean, it depends what you're doing. It depends what species you're going after, but fly fishing is pretty active. So you are walking and trying different spots, whereas there are some fishing methods where you might be sitting in the same place all day. And that's why actually fishing is so amazing, because if you, let's say, you have mobility issues, you can actually find something for you. And if you want to burn off those calories and climb a mountain and fish a little tiny lake at the top of that mountain, then you can do that as well. So I love how fishing covers all bases for anyone who wants to get involved and try it. And what else is fly fishing? So you can pretty much catch any species on the fly with a fly rod. Fly tying is an art in itself. So fishing is an art, no matter what kind of rod you're casting with, or it's an art. You have to learn so much about the piece of water in front of you and the species and how they feed. But you also have fly tying, so if you want to make your own flies, I've got a few in front of me right now. You can tie all sorts of different things with material, synthetic or um, you know, animal or bird feathers.
And is it that you're mimicking those animals? Is that what kind of attracts the fish?
Yeah, so they call it match the hatch. So you have to almost match the fly or the bait fish pattern that these fish that you're after are eating, feeding off. So you're trying to trick the fish basically. But there are flies that look like, I don't know, there are crazy flies that look like nothing. They're an attractor fly. So you've got flies that imitate things, and you've got attractor flies that it catches the attention of the fish that you're casting at. So, and I've got more flies here. You've got really big flies, as you can see, the snake fly, which is this long black one. But you also, and that you would be casting at trout, but in the same breath, you can also cast at that same trout with this tiny one that you can hardly see on this camera, which is, you would think, how is that hook meant to catch a fish? And it does, So yeah, it's such an open book. There's so much to learn, and I think that's why it's such an interesting sport for many, because it's never ending with information and challenges, and um, for someone who wants to escape and you forget about everything, this is a great thing to get in. Yeah.
It sounds like there's a lot to learn. So there's like the technical kind of, technical skills, the cerebral skills, but then there's also the physical side. And as a teacher, you teach all different age groups, but you also teach children. And I suppose you came to love the sport yourself as a child. And so, can children benefit from an early introduction to fishing? And if so, how do they benefit from it?
It's funny because as an instructor, you either love teaching kids or you hate teaching kids. And I'm in the love teaching kids category. I turn into a kid when I'm teaching kids. I love the games. It's not actually that straightforward teaching kids, because they have such a short attention span, and you have to be really, really careful that they don't end up getting bored, cold, hurting themselves, because you don't want them to relate that moment to fishing. So you have to, for me, keep it nice and short. I would say if you have a kid below the age of, I would even go up to the 12, 14, maybe. Keep it short, do half days, don't do longer. If you're fishing with your kid and you know how to fish, don't hog the rod, because no kid wants to just go out and watch, and they'll get cold, they'll get bored. I At this fishing school, we do kids days, and we make up a lot of fishing games. So it might be popping balloons with a hook on the end, or it might be learning about different fish species. So we've got lots of fish toys, stuffed fish toys that there's one pike with one trout, and they have to we tell them at the beginning of the session what they all are, and they have to remember that. And then at the end of the session, we do like what's this species? Learning about flies, tying their own fly. That's a really good way of incorporate. I think because also kids, they're not that strong. So if you take them out for a long session of casting, 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 they'll get tired. And I think the more you can incorporate, and then basically take them fishing on a place where they have a really high chance of catching, because fishing isn't guaranteed, as we know, but or catching isn't guaranteed. But if you can hopefully get at least a fish on the end of the line, then they'll remember that feeling, and want to hopefully try it again. But it's just about giving them tidbits so that they don't get bored or something else that ruins that experience for them.
And it's such an activity that requires so much focus, your whole body, your mind. That's also a really great thing to take kids away from some of the, you know, screens, I suppose, and other indoor activities that parents always want to get their kids out of. But actually, going back to the physical part of the sport, now at Breast Cancer UK, we talk a lot about regular physical activity and the importance it has on reducing our breast cancer risk. In fact, it can reduce our breast cancer risk by around 20%. But there's also more studies that show that staying active can reduce the risk of cancer recurrence as well as death from cancer. And there's lots of other benefits of physical activity. But the key thing really is finding something you love to make physical activity a part of your everyday life. And so when people think about fitness, and we often have this dialogue with people, they often think about gym or conventional sport. But do you think that less mainstream disciplines such as fishing, do you think they're becoming more popular as a way of keeping people moving?
I think I would say yes. We have this kind of running joke that, there's a cartoon and it says, "I'm an athlete," and he's a fisherman with a beer belly. And I think it's a very gentle activity, a sport, a physical sport, and I think that's why it's so good because you can get your 10,000 steps in. It's a repetitive motion with your one, your dominant side, but you can also fish with your non-dominant side, and then you can, that repetitive motion I think is very good. And I'm not sure whether have you heard of Casting for Recovery? The breast cancer. So it's a breast cancer fishing charity who started in the US and actually came over to the UK, but it stopped during COVID. But they are huge in the US and it's an amazing, amazing charity. It's for women with breast cancer and they do all sorts of events. And there are studies, like you said, because of the repetitive motion, the walking, the breathing in the fresh, air. And I think as a bundle, fishing is really good for anyone who tries it. And also, an obvious one for your mental health, just to be away from your laptop or your phone or the hustle and bustle of whatever that your life brings, or personal problems or illness. I think getting away from that just for a second and fishing for me, when I think of fishing, fishing is a challenge. So throughout your whole fishing session, you're thinking, what should I tie on next? How do I improve my cast? Trying to find fish. So your mind is constantly moving to the next challenge. And I think that's why it's so good because it keeps you busy. And yes, we're not running marathons and we're not, you could actually, I mentioned before, you can actually find lakes up mountains, but most of your fly fishing scenarios are walking around that lake or wading that river, and you're constantly on the move. But on the flip side, if you are struggling with mobility, it is also a very, very good place to be.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, actually, one of your other passions is the work that you do for the charity you co-founded, the Cancer and Pisces Trust. And one of the things that you set up the charity for was to support cancer patients and their carers through angling, but also to support them to get through those extremely traumatic periods. Can you talk to us more about the benefits of fishing to the members of your charity and some of their stories?
So I will start with a comment that I've just heard today. So one of our members, he couldn't make it today because he's in hospital, but he said to one of the ladies who works at Cancer and Pisces, or his wife said to this lady that fishing was one of the things that was keeping him going in Cancer and Pisces, because I think for him, he's learnt how to fish during his diagnosis, and he's met so many friends at Cancer and Pisces, and it's almost like we're a really great team, and we've now known some of our members for 4 years, and you know, it's a repetitive thing. So if you know that next month you get to go to that lake and you get to meet those friendly faces and talk about what's going on if you want to, and if it makes you feel better, it's just it's something to look forward to. And I also think it's a lot of it is community. And you know, we provide a safe space for people. They have a free lunch, and I think it's just about being outside. It just makes people feel so much better. Yeah.
And what drove you to create the charity?
So, when I was living in London, I was doing free casting lessons in different, well, the main park was Green Park, but we actually were at Moden, is it Moden? Somewhere in, anyway, I can't remember exact, Moden Hall. But we were basically at a different park giving a free casting tuition to anyone, any passerbys. And basically, this man came up to me and said that he actually had prostate cancer, and he said to me that he was trying to find a fishing charity for everyone, because we had casting for recovery for women, but nothing for men. And he said, could I help him? And at that time, I didn't have the school, I didn't have a venue, I didn't really have that much experience, so I couldn't facilitate it, but it kind of stuck by me. And then during lockdown, I was sent Mick May's book, Cancer and Pisces, to review. And it was all about his sort of illness, and from he'd been fishing his whole life, but a lot of the book, and he's a wonderful man, he did so much in his career, but during his illness, fishing was probably the most important thing for his mental health. And it's a really, really great book if anyone stumbles across it or orders it. And I mean, it struck me, and I just thought it took me back to that time where I was speaking to this man in London. And so I decided to track Mick down and see whether he liked my idea of starting up a pilot venue at the Northern Fishing School. And from the get-go, from the first conversation we had over the phone, and we were in lockdown, so he was locked down in the UK, I was in the lockdown in Germany with my husband, and so I basically just started building a website, and he started, you know, contacting his contacts in the UK to see who could help us. And basically we went from there and set up the charity. We got charitable status pretty quickly, and then we built a trustee team. So we have, and that actually strangely we all had a connection with, so I had lots of connections with Mick, and our trustees actually ended up being people that we mutually knew. So it was, yeah, it was an amazing setup.
A match made in
Yeah,
heaven.
it was a very easy, I don't know what it must have meant to have been, because it was all so smooth, and it just and it, touch wood, it still is amazing. And we are just trying to find our fourth venue now in the UK.
My
So
goodness.
yeah, it's a very exciting time.
What a wonderful thing you're offering people. Literally a lifeline, hey? And let's talk about your memoir. You talk about in your memoir how in your early 20s fishing offered you that escape from city life. And it also helped you get through some deeply personal struggles. How was connecting with nature an important part of your healing process?
I was living in London. I was pretty miserable. I'd just come home after living in New Zealand for 2 years, and I was just finding that life was very repetitive, and I wasn't really doing much with it, and I wanted to go out and find happiness, but also something that I could do when I was living in the city. And you actually don't think of fishing, but I my parents actually, when I was 21, gave me a trout rod and a salmon rod, and I started kind of putting out my feelers to see where I could go fishing in London without a car. And then eventually I had a car, so it was easier to get around. But I started going to fisheries around London. So I first went to Zion Park, which was quite near to where I lived. And, you know, I would be fishing along and there would be a plane that would go over. There's cows in the field left to me, and then over the other side of the lake there's a high rises everywhere. So it was quite a bizarre place, but a really cool place, because I still felt like I was in the city, but I had escaped. You know, I could grasp both sides of the table. And yeah, it was just, that was my focus every weekend. I would, you know, in the week I was pretty miserable because I was never a city girl, but at the weekend I knew I was going fishing, and it just kept me going. And the more and more I did, the more I knew that this was my life. Like I had to do something drastic to get myself out of the city and try and make this my career, my life, because it made me so happy. And I did. That's exactly what I did.
What tips do you have for city dwellers so that they can get better connected to nature?
I think that you're not as far as you imagine from a place that you could find that makes you relaxed. Like even in London there are places like that, but I think when you're in it and you feel like you need to be, I think there's a lot of social pressure, and you feel like you need to, because actually if you are alone in London and you live on your alone, or you live with someone who has an other half, and so you are alone quite a lot, it's quite easy to kind of fall into this habit of you know, you feel a little bit depressed, you feel alone, you don't know what to do. And actually and also especially if you don't want to go out to nightclubs and do this and that and be busy all the time, London, because it's such a bright and busy city, but actually you don't necessarily have to be that city person to enjoy the city. So there are beautiful rivers like the River Wandle, although probably highly polluted. And also there's, you know, I wouldn't say to people go swimming in it, but it's so nice to just walk along it and just be in nature, but also get there on the tube or the bus. You know, you don't have to drive hours to get to somewhere beautiful when you live in the city. And the adventure, I think the adventure is the most important thing in your mind. Like, go on an adventure, find your adventure, and you will, you know, so many people are into hiking now, climbing, bouldering. It's just all of these things. They don't cost much, but they make you really, really happy.
They make a big
Yeah.
difference, and they get you out in fresh air and also your body moving. But the thing about connecting with nature is all the benefits of nature also means that we need to look after it. Now, you are a trustee for River Action, so another thing that you're engaged with, and you've been really vocal in the fight against river pollution. So, first of all, why is protecting our waterways so important? And also, what is it? Who are the main offenders when it comes to the pollution of our waterways?
So there are a few different offenders. I would say water companies have not done their best job in updating the sewage systems, and basically, I think, if you know, for the headlines, we all know that it's got out of control, and our water bills, funny enough, are going up because they need to find the money from somewhere. And it's a scary thing, because nothing is happening fast enough to save our rivers. You know, we've also got agricultural pollution and rubbish pollution and microplastics and industry pollution. There's so many things that are actually companies, organizations use our waterways to discard their rubbish. And that could be, that's not necessarily just throwing a crisp packet in the river. It's abstraction. It's all sorts of things that we can't see that's going on, but actually it's all catching up because there's lots of science projects where now we're testing the water all the time. There's organizations like River Action UK and local organizations that are also testing the water, holding people to account. So the work that's been done is amazing, but the regulations and the rules around using our water for certain things, that's not changing or updating fast enough.
It's not moving fast enough at all, is it? The regulation. The problem is clear. You have great organizations, as you say, who do the testing, and multiple organizations, but the regulation keeps falling far behind, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not a good situation. And also really sad one, because you think, like, we have the most beautiful countryside, we have the most beautiful waterways, we have a great coast, and like we're talking about before, being in nature, being around water is very therapeutic. And yet I would not say to someone's children, oh, take a dip, it's a hot summer's day, I've got my dog, I'm going to throw a stick in the water. Like, I wouldn't do that. I get worried when my dog goes into the river and I think, oh, is he going to get sick later? Like, it's not and even like Surfers Against Sewage, like they have an app. I think it's called Safer Seas and Rivers, I think, something along the lines of, and it has it basically has alerts and dots where it says it's safe to swim here. And a lot of the time our whole coast is red, do not swim in our in the ocean. And how have we got to this? Like, how are we abusing it so much that it's okay, or that they're getting away with it? It's just outrageous.
And how does it affect fly fishing? Because fly fishing relies on understanding your environment, from the temperature to the life cycle of the fish and so on. So how do these pollutants and things like environmental chemicals, how do they impact on your ability to predict all these subtle changes?
So I would say there's three things. One is fish kills. So a river can be so highly polluted that it actually kills off a whole river system. The second one would be the fly life. So if the waterway is badly polluted, then the fly life, the things that the fish feed on, and everything else that has that circle of life is going to be affected, because there's not as much food in the river. So you get populations of fish just dying off. And then also, if the water is polluted, you let's say a fish is spawning there, you won't get the clean water that it needs to hatch those eggs. So all these things, we need clean water. And for example, for the Atlantic salmon, you need cold, clean water, and we're although some say the water, the rivers are in better condition after the industrial pollution, where the rivers were, the River Tyne, where I live near, was completely sterile of salmon because of the water pollution. But that's not an excuse, even though if it is better than that era, it's not an excuse not to have better water quality than we do now.
Yeah, and it's kind of replacing one pollutant with a different kind of pollutant, that we're seeing today. So the pollutants we're seeing today are harming animals and wildlife, but they can also have an impact on our health. And there are substances that you didn't see back in the Industrial Revolution, such as microplastics, for example, and they can have an impact on our whole hormone system, as well as that of fish, actually. And certain studies have linked these to the potential risk of increase in breast cancer. So, why? I mean, we see this as being really important as well, but why do you think it's important to see pollution as a human issue and not just something that affects the world around us?
I think it's really difficult because, I mean, it is a human issue, right? Because we have a huge population of people in the UK, and worldwide as well. And a lot of these situations and places where there are problems, it's usually where there are more people. There's a concentrated amount of people. So your cities, your towns, and the systems that we're using are so old. But for me, I can't understand why, for example, the water companies aren't. I know that they also are in debt, like huge debts, but it's not fair for us to all pay, more for our more water bills than so we can cover the cost of their mistake. It's not fair. They should be being held accountable for their problem.
Do you have tips for what the average person can do to help protect their waterways? Because I think there is that real sense of powerlessness, it's being imposed on us to deal with, but actually, what resources do we have as individuals to protect our waterways?
I would say keep an eye out online for these petitions because your signature is also one of thousands, and it's important that I think a lot of the people, like you said, people feel powerless, but I think you can be more proactive, and your opinion, your education, your help, if you can give it, is really, really important. And also, like, for example, things like, which is my pet peeve, I went around Tesco's the other day, and their Fred and Flow brand, which do clothing but also do wet wipes and baby stuff. Their wet wipes say flushable wet wipes. No wet wipe is flushable, and I've been fishing in places in rivers where everything is covered in wet wipes, tampons, things that are just not meant to go down the loo. And so I think as an individual, you have to kind of, we are all at the moment in an era where we all are what are they calling it? The healthy, we're like chucking out our non-stick pans and going for, what's,
Healthy substitutes.
yeah, there's like,
I know the term
yeah.
you're going. I know the term you're going for. We're all trying to kind of do what's right, and some of the advice we offer people is yes, it's better to use this, but people have to be mindful not to just throw everything out because they suddenly want to clear up their household and keep everything healthily. There's a responsibility as well that we all have with how we dispose of these things.
Yeah, exactly. And there are alternatives. So like if you think that there's so many there's one example I can think of. For example, I've been using one of those washing up sponges with you put the liquid in the stick and then you're sponging. So I've been using those for years because they're so easy, and your fairy liquid comes out, and it's but apparently the sponge has microplastics, which then every time you use it goes into the sink, into the water, and it causes mayhem, but you never see it. You never see it like that because it just disappears into water, which is why our waterways are abused so much. But I've gone to but also these sponges, you're throwing them away all the time. So I've moved over to I bought them off Amazon. They're like a wooden brush, and they last for ages, and you can wash them up. They're good as new, and they're not the microplastic. There are no microplastics in it. That's not going into your water. So things like that we can just be a little bit more aware of, and also in the long run actually save you money. because you're not having to throw them away all the time.
Yeah, I mean that makes so much sense. We've got a whole guide on how to kind of clear out toxic
Yeah.
chemicals and environmental chemicals in your home. And actually, at the end of the day, all of the advice is not only going to reduce the number of chemicals floating about in your house, but it's going to also save money in the pocket because you're going to be buying a product that's cheaper. You're probably making your own alternatives for cleaning products, things like that. And you'll be spending less. So the alternative, we've been sold this idea that everything's so practical and it's so easy, but actually when you break it down, it isn't. We've been fooled into thinking that these things are really convenient, they're going to change our lives, but they're not necessary. So it's about changing that mindset, isn't it? And giving people more agency to create their own alternatives and have the home, a home that's free from these industrial chemicals that we don't need for the
What's
most
it?
part,
I think it's like non-toxic lifestyle, something like this. You
Yes,
know.
yeah. Toxic free,
Yeah,
yeah.
toxic-free
And
lifestyle.
it's very popular, but as you say, that it comes sometimes with some contradictions, and we've all got to be mindful of it. But it's a big problem, and it's fantastic that your organisation River Action is doing work to highlight the problem and hopefully lobby for those regulatory changes, because at the end of the day, with a lot of these issues around chemicals, around the impact chemicals have on our environment and on our health, it's regulation and policy that's going to solve it. It's not, the grassroots is great and we want people to start thinking about the impact they have, but without regulations to support how much of these chemicals are going into our rivers and into our homes even, it's very difficult to tackle. So it's great work that you're doing. But it's been lovely chatting, and I do have some questions that are not related to fishing and angling, and that's something we ask all of our guests. What is your biggest guilty pleasure? Do you have one?
I do, and it's really, really weird one. People are going to judge me on it. In different times of my life, I've had cravings for Marmite pasta.
Marmite pasta?
So
I've
good.
never heard of
It's
that.
amazing. Marmite pasta with parmesan on top.
Wow.
That's a guilty
It's
pleasure.
funny how Marmite is got this addictive quality, and then you want it everywhere. Is that it? You want everything to have a bit of a Marmite flavour.
Yeah, and I go through phases of loving it. Marmite pasta. I'm sure I first had Marmite pasta in New Zealand, but then it's
What you
Vegemite.
mean?
You're Vegemite.
It's already made.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes, Vegemite in Australia.
Vegemite, which
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love as well. But Marmite's
yeah,
more accessible here. But I just love
yeah,
it's like the saltiness, isn't it? And yeah, it's
yeah.
amazing.
And
Pleasure.
it's definitely one of those that has to be introduced at a young age, because when you haven't tasted it, it really tastes quite horrific.
Strong.
The
Yeah.
first time you try it, but then for some reason the brain clicks in, and then you love it. Um,
Or
okay,
you
now
hate it.
yeah, yeah. No, I love it, and I'm also very, I don't engage in the debate over Marmite and Vegemite. For me, they're equally as good. Um, I'll have them both. Um, Now, our listeners will be keen to hear your personal recommendations. You've talked about so many things today. You've talked about your whole angling life, your fly fishing life, but also the work that you do with your charities or your two charities. So do you have any recommendations for us, any books or podcasts or films or anything that's inspired you that you'd like to share with the listeners?
I would say that, okay, so books wise, if you're getting into trout fishing, one of my first books was called Match the Hatch. And I've actually got a copy. Maybe you could actually link it. I can send you all the details.
Yeah,
But so
yeah,
Match
that'd
the
be
Hatch,
great.
and it's really easy. It's small, nice and easy to carry with you every time you go fishing. But what it does is explain to you what flies you should be using at certain times of the year. So very seasonal.
Okay,
And if you get stuck, you can open this book, take it out of your fishing bag, and then basically it will give you, all the information that you need for that, time where you need it the most. And I would say
brilliant.
as I've just done my double-handed casting exam, the book that really helped me is Spey Casting by Simon Gorsworth. So that's a great book for if you're getting into salmon fishing with a double-handed rod. And podcasts wise, I would say I like the April Vokey. She does a great one. She's interviewed a hell of a lot of people around the world. So, and she is Canadian. And so that's a great one. And what else did you say? Books, podcasts, and films.
Yeah, well, not forgetting your own book, of course,
Yes,
Cast,
cast.
Catch, Release, which was only released last year. You need to do a little bit of self-plugging as well.
Yes, definitely. Cast, catch, and release. It's Cast, catch, and release is about my journey, but also it weaves the story of the Atlantic salmon with mine. So there's there's nature writing, personal stories, ups and downs, and also about a species that is so remarkable, and it has an incredible journey from birth river out to sea to back to its birth river. um, and then a great movie, actually. Obviously, A River Runs Through It with Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
But a really cool one is Kiss the Water, and it's all about this fly tyer called Megan Boyd, who she's now unfortunately passed away, but she used to tie flies for the royal family, and she has such an interesting story. And it's a really, really well made movie. So yeah,
Wow.
I'd
Well,
say
if you send us all those links, we'll put them in the
definitely.
show notes. That sounds fabulous. Now, what are your plans for the future? What's on your kind of dream list, something that you want to achieve?
So so obviously Cancer and Pisces, I want to keep growing and finding new venues and eventually have a map, because we have a map on our website with our different venues, but I want the map to be full of our venues around the UK, so that we're
Brilliant.
reaching all areas. And then a personal one is, well, I've just had a baby 2 months
Oh,
ago. Yeah,
congratulations.
so I would like to. It's funny because now that everyone's saying, have you been fishing yet? And I have done a tiny bit of fishing, but it's really, really hard. It's hard to remember everything and, actually be able to get away from the baby to fish. But I really can't wait to introduce her and see it through her eyes. So I didn't, I want to introduce fishing to her from the nature aspect, not the, catching. I want to kind of introduce her to the wilderness and her on my back and kind of, yeah, see it
Wonderful.
through her eyes. And
Sounds totally
yeah,
idyllic.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Where can our listeners find out more about you?
So my website is marinagibsonfishing.com. Then the fishing school, if you ever want to come visit, is northernfishingschool.com. And Cancer and Pisces Trust.com. Probably the most important one for your listeners is that if you find yourself wanting to give fishing a go, and our fishing sessions are free. So if you want to become a member, you can sign up, you can attend our fishing sessions, learn how to fish. We have away days now, so if you can't book on to one of our fishing sessions because they're fully booked, we can introduce you to someone who's doing an away day, and those are free as well. So we've got so many opportunities, and we just like to help, and we want more people to find out about us, because we really do genuinely believe that we have helped so many people, and we've had such great feedback that we just want to introduce it to more people.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Marina. It's been a delight chatting. I've learnt so much, and it's really kind of woken me up again to I forgot how much I loved fishing as a kid. And I used to fish with my grandfather as well. But then it all kind of ended after that when I got older. But I think it's a wonderful thing you're doing, and I've really enjoyed chatting.
I know you are very busy, but if you ever want to come and visit us, then you are more than welcome.
I I
And
will.
also, wherever you live in the world, fishing will be a stone's throw away. So, for you,
Right.
Tally, if you ever want me to research your area, I will find you some fishing because honestly, it's great even for very busy people like yourself, just to have, even if it's for 2 hours after work, just to have that mental break is very good. So.
You're right. Thank you. Yes, I'll take you up on that. Let's have a chat. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Tally.